There is nothing greater than consciousness. Right now, you are conscious.
Here is a free chapter from the book Consciousness is All by Peter Francis Dziuban. You can buy whole book on the official website consciousnessisall.com.
What exactly is this consciousness that you now are? Did you ever ask yourself what pure consciousness is, entirely distinct from everything you are conscious of? What is true of pure consciousness, all by itself alone? That is the theme of this book, and the best way to start is by first agreeing there is consciousness. That's easy enough, and more importantly, it's undeniable. You never can say, there is no consciousness, because you must already be conscious in order to say it. Of course, I'm conscious, the thought may come. Why belabor such an obvious fact? Stop and consider what consciousness means. If the very consciousness here, now, were not conscious, you wouldn't be able to say there was such a thing as this book, or the body holding it. As far as you are concerned, there would be no such thing as a home, no job, no possessions or money. How do you know this is true? The only way those things can be said to exist is that you appear to be conscious of them. It is all thanks to the fact that there is consciousness. If there were no consciousness functioning, it would be impossible to say there is anything. It couldn't be said there was a single flower, tree, or mountain. There would be none of the riches on earth, not to mention the earth itself. It couldn't be said there was a moon, stars, or one speck of the entire universe. Without consciousness first being conscious, simply nothing could be said to exist, not even life itself. In fact, one couldn't even be conscious of a nothingness. Your consciousness of your world is all there is to your world. The point is, nothing is greater than or exists beyond consciousness. This isn't anything mystical, it's a fact. Right now, ask yourself, what could exist beyond or be greater than consciousness? Really try to come up with something out beyond it. Whatever is mentioned, even the whole universe, the only reason it can be mentioned is because it is something you appear to be conscious of. If anything, the universe seems or appears to be within consciousness. Consciousness never is within it. Thus, consciousness is greater than it, and not bounded by it at all. At the moment, yes, it certainly seems or appears as if many things are outside of, or beyond your body, such as this book, other objects, even the moon. But no thing ever is out beyond consciousness. Awareness, is it? If it were, one could not appear to be aware of that thing. General human belief, of course, always has said consciousness is confined inside the human body, somewhere in the brain. That simply is not true, though it may seem or appear so. It's an assumption, just like the old assumption that the earth was flat because it appears so. A major endeavor of this book is to show conclusively, in various ways, how and why consciousness is not inside the body. Consciousness is infinite and boundless. It never is contained or bordered by the body or any other thing, not even the entire stellar universe. Mistaken human belief says the universe is greater than consciousness, and that the universe produced consciousness. It says consciousness or life is biological and slowly evolved inside a physical body, on a planet Earth, in passing time, all as a byproduct of that universe. Consciousness itself is incapable of having been produced by a universe, a planet Earth, a chemical or biological process, or any other thing you appear to be conscious of. Why? If consciousness were produced by anything, the thing would have to be before there was consciousness. But if there were no consciousness, there would be no consciousness to even say the thing itself existed. The thing itself could not honestly be said to exist, thus would not exist to do any producing. Traditional thinking implies the universe still would exist if there were no consciousness. How could one be certain if there were absolutely no consciousness to verify such a thing? Who would vouch for a universe still existing? There are other reasons why consciousness cannot be limited and is not inside the body. Think about those who have had what are called near-death or afterlife experiences. There are many documented cases in which the body was supposedly knocked out or unconscious, yet consciousness continued functioning because they still had an experience they were vividly conscious of. Others claim to have had various out-of-body experiences. But there is no such thing as an out-of-consciousness experience, is there? Otherwise, one couldn't know of the experience. Again, simply nothing exists beyond or is greater than consciousness. Awareness. Consciousness and awareness are treated as synonyms in these pages. Any scientist will tell you the human body really is not a solid object, even though it seems so. It would be just countless atomic particles that all are constantly moving or vibrating. These particles are so incredibly tiny that the space between them, in relative terms, is greater than the space between the Earth and Sun. The human body is more space than solidity. Consciousness couldn't be inside such an arrangement because there's really no solid object there to be inside of. Consciousness isn't a word. It is literally the very substance wherein all existing goes on. Consciousness is actively aware and alive as all presence, the only real place there is. It is the one essential stuff, without which your everyday affairs and entire universe wouldn't even appear to exist. The implications of this fact are so enormous, so thrilling, it's indescribable. That's why this book is titled Consciousness is All. This allness of consciousness is why it sometimes also is called the One Self, I Am, Life, the Divine, Infinite Intelligence, Love, or what some call God. They all are synonyms for what is the same one. If you can't warm up to these terms because they're not scientific enough, stay with the terms consciousness or life. It certainly can't be denied there is consciousness or life. Regardless of the term, what counts is that it never is a. Consciousness, a power afar off, that is all there is of all there is. It is the one being aware right here, now. So this can be read to make the essential distinction that they never are personal. After all, why are consciousness and other synonyms capitalized? It is done. Who is it, really, that's being conscious? Is there a personal thinking mind that knows how to be conscious? Of course not. No person, no body, cranks up consciousness in the morning and sustains or upholds it all day long by thinking about it moment to moment. The capacity to be conscious, alive, clearly is something no person is doing or is responsible for. Always, it is consciousness itself or life itself that is conscious, that is alive to say I, right here, now. Consciousness itself, or what is called the self, really is the only I. This never changes. As you read, you'll see why consciousness is not the same as what is called the personal thinking, sensing, mind. They're vastly different. To assume consciousness is confined to an intellect and 5 physical senses of seeing, hearing, touch, taste, and smell is way short of the mark. The so-called human thinking, sensing mind deals only with that which is limited or finite. It constantly needs to expand and progress out of its limitations. It always looks out beyond itself to something greater. Always looks up to a God, self, or consciousness. What about starting from the other direction? Instead of looking up to the self, what about looking out from the self? That's what the self or consciousness itself is doing. It never looks up to itself, and it is the only one being conscious right here, now. To look out from simply means consciousness itself gets all the credit, all presence and power. There honestly is no other being conscious. One needn't do anything for this to operate perfectly here, now. Consciousness itself already is doing or being it all. What becomes obvious is shockingly simple, yet undeniable. The fact that consciousness, or the self itself, is the only one being conscious here, now, precludes there being another, lesser consciousness that has to become anything. No transformation is necessary, or even possible. The one consciousness already is all the consciousness that is functioning. It is fully, perfectly aware, and never has been otherwise. This shatters the myth of a would-be secondary self that must struggle to get at one with a vague God. Humanity always has put the cart before the horse, identifying as a body, a thing one appears to be conscious of, instead of as consciousness itself. To mistakenly identify as a mere body, as a physical self which can make errors, be sick or poor, must elevate itself and get there, is dead wrong. It completely ignores consciousness in favor of a mere thing one appears to be conscious of. It is a cut-off, entirely false self. Any book or teaching that starts out with such a false separate you, having a second-rate life and consciousness that must work up to, has a premise that is, frankly, backwards. This book starts from the other direction, with the you that already is there, which is truth. It doesn't take away your identity, but instead shows the magnificence of true identity. The human way of life appears to be one of starting with imperfection and trying to progress out of it. Looking out from pure consciousness doesn't start with human experience and try to take it to a higher level. It starts with the perfection of the divine self and stays here. Instantly, it's a completely new life. Read these pages as if it were consciousness, the one self, talking to itself. This is the only viewpoint that is valid, true, and actually operating because, again, the self is the only one being conscious and alive here, now, so this can even be read. That may take getting used to. Chances are you've never read anything written this way. Just think what a marvelous book it would be if the self, the one, wrote a book about itself. What would the one self say? It couldn't speak of a human struggle of becoming the self. It could speak only of already being the self. It wouldn't have to instruct or say what it must do to get at one with itself, because it already is that. All the self could speak of is its own presence, the immediacy of itself to itself. It could state only what it already, presently is: oneness, wholeness, completeness, and perfection. Would that leave you out? Not at all. That self being conscious here, now, is the only you there is. Because this book speaks from the one self, pure consciousness, it may at first seem it's talking in circles and isn't leading anywhere. That's just it. The self isn't leading anywhere. It's already at itself. Frustration may try to creep in because it seems you're not making progress. That, too, is precisely the point. Your self, the awareness reading this now, isn't progressing to itself because it already is itself. In early chapters, it may seem nothing is happening, and actually, plenty is happening. By staying with pure awareness, which is you, all false assumptions and everything not you seems to fall away. It never was true of you. These pages state clearly and simply how the divine self, unlimited awareness, the infinite itself, never is afar off or separate, but is this present consciousness that now enables these words to be read and have meaning. This very same consciousness really is the only one to have written this book, because a body named Peter Francis Dziuban isn't the one consciousness. Most emphatically, there is no personal author that assumes he is being the self or has a special in with God. But it is possible here and now, in fact essential, to speak from the standpoint of the self, since it is the one being aware in the first place, so any writing or reading can be done. Would you prefer to be talked down to, patronized, as if not fully aware and intelligent? For yourself to enjoy, its freedom of simply being, without the frustration of trying to become, isn't violating some law. On the contrary, only this is how life actually functions. To not start here is to try to go against the way life is already operating. Does this all sound too good, too simple or absolute to be true? The self never is too absolute for itself, and there is no other. Why not let it determine what makes for good reading? Is consciousness, or the self, what God actually is? Don't just blindly agree because you may have heard so before. Please don't disagree based on prior education about another kind of God. If you hesitate about a consciousness God, what's the alternative? An unconscious God? Have you a fire and brimstone God on a throne, waiting to reward, or more likely punish, on Judgment Day? Suppose you right now came face to face with that God. What is the only way you would know it, and be certain of having arrived in heaven? Wouldn't you appear to be conscious of the entire experience? You would have to be aware of this so-called God to be certain you had finally met. For this so-called God to even appear there would depend on your being conscious of it. If there were no consciousness, this God wouldn't be. So this God depends entirely on consciousness for its existence. It is merely a mental concept, not true God or a power at all. A concept never is conscious or alive. It doesn't even know it is there. Only consciousness itself is conscious to know anything. Real power resides not with any human conceptual God, but with consciousness, which is forever greater than all concepts. Why start with a vague God or some concept and try to kid yourself into believing this mental concoction is omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient? Turn the whole thing completely around. First, find out specifically what, if anything, is omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. That's what should be called God. See why consciousness is absolutely all presence, all power, and all knowing. This is for you to determine from an unbiased reading of what is presented here. Most likely you have flipped through these pages already and found some of the language unusual, perhaps startling. That's good. Don't feel lost if some of the capitalized words are new and unlike anything you've seen before. They have to be, because what you are about to read presents a simple but fundamental reversal of human teaching and understanding. It reverses the mistaken identification from body to consciousness. If you were conveying a new viewpoint, that of consciousness, not a body, you'd need a brand new way of expressing it. Using the same old words would leave the reader no choice but to apply old meanings, and would be just a rehash of the same old thing. These pages give a fresh, new take on life. The language seems unusual only if read out of context. To skim or jump ahead to later sections is a waste. The writing seems like an odd way of speaking, or just so much ethereal gibberish. Yet when you see what the words really mean, they zero in on your true self like a laser beam. They make it impossible to be ignorant or ignorant of consciousness. That's what the word ignorant basically means. Ignorant. It implies there is that which always is present, but is being ignored, whether knowingly or not. What appears to be the current human era generally prides itself on being the most enlightened and savvy that evolution has produced up to now. Incredibly, there seems to remain this ignorance, a vagueness and lack of clarity as to the meaning of even the most basic words, those so fundamental to living. You'll be amazed at how simple words such as be, is, present, one, all, and words like conscious or alive are often so hazily defined. You are about to see what these words truly mean, but not by intellectual analysis. Far from it. One never finds consciousness itself in words. The true meaning of these words is a specific conscious experience, an alive presence that literally comes to life because it is your life. What is the actual stuff that the word consciousness stands for? What is it that has to be present first in order to need the word to label it? You already are unstoppably being that which is changelessly behind all these words. Inside, you also will find simple explanations of some of the toughest, age-old, and unanswered questions ever faced by philosophers and scientists. They concern the infinite, the divine, and the nature of the so-called material world, time, and creation. There are even the answers to those two deep, profound issues that keep everyone awake at night. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? And if a tree falls in the forest? Seriously, even these are answered in an easy new way, because by looking out from pure consciousness, the infinite, one is outside the box of a finite human intellect. By this point, you should be asking, how do I know all this is true? This may be well and good if I accept the premise that consciousness is all, but how do I know that's true? Just who is the author to be making all these statements? And who is to say this necessarily is truth, instead of what other books or teachings say? In other words, you want to be certain that what is said here is really the way it is. There's a simple answer to that. It's found in the word is. Think it through for yourself. Whatever is truth, reality, or the way life is must be that which actually is. Whatever is going to be true or be truth has to truly be. It has to exist. It has to be present, and never can change. It doesn't matter what word is used: consciousness, self, God, reality. Only what really is can be what is real. There's nothing deep or difficult about that. And if something isn't really being, it certainly isn't being real. It doesn't even exist. It isn't actually present anywhere. So how could it function, or be any kind of truth or reality? It couldn't. Only that which truly is can be that which is true. No exceptions. None for philosophy, science, or religion. Now it gets exciting. That which truly is must also be you. Why? You could not be nor be conscious as something that is not present. To be conscious, consciousness has to be. Put it this way: if you weren't now being, if you weren't now consciously present, you wouldn't even exist to have questions or care about this. But you do exist. You are now present and aware. To see the truth of this, try a little test. Try to make consciousness not be. See if consciousness, the pure awareness you are presently aware of being, can be taken out of being present. Can awareness somehow be taken away, so it isn't being present now, but is backed up to 5 minutes ago? Or can awareness be pushed ahead by 5 minutes, so it isn't being present now? Try as hard as you can to make pure awareness move or pass away in time so it isn't being. The more you try, the more you see the impossibility of it. Awareness truly is. For this to be clear, identify yourself as pure awareness, pure consciousness, only, entirely distinct from the body and everything else you seem to be aware of. One who is alert sees that pure awareness, all by itself alone, never changes or goes away. Thoughts come and go, yes. Emotions pass. And the body's 5 forms of sensing, what is seen, heard, touched, tasted, and smelled, change constantly. Looking closely, you see it's always the stuff you seem to be aware of that's changing and passing. never awareness itself. Awareness, all by itself alone, is present as pure being, a changeless presence which simply, immovably is. Go ahead, try to move awareness physically by giving it a shove. Can it be done? Try mentally to outmaneuver awareness and think it away, or make it change from being present now. Even try spiritually to pray awareness away with all the faith you can muster. No amount of physical effort, mental effort, or belief can do it. Not even the highest intellectual arguments about semantics or definitions will alter pure awareness or make it other than absolutely present. Now contrast the thinking, sensing mind with the pure awareness you are. They're not the same at all. The mind's activity would be everything that is not pure awareness. While awareness simply is being, absolutely everything the thinking, sensing mind claims to experience involves the movement or passing of time. Look closely at how the mind works. It takes the passing of time to think thoughts. It takes time to experience sensations, to see sights, hear sounds, and to touch, taste, and smell. It takes time to feel emotions, and even to have psychic experiences. Yet all such things that pass in time are only what you seem to be aware of. None of that is awareness itself. Awareness as it is being isn't passing in the flow of time with those things. It's the way a pure white movie screen never budges, while the movie characters and images superimposed on it appear to move and change constantly. Pure awareness is changelessly present. Now go back to the mind's activity that's always moving and passing on in time. Its activity never is present. It's like the constant sweep of the second hand on a watch, which never quits moving. Time never stops passing to be present, to be what truly is. Time seems to flow non-stop, as the future, that which is not yet, instantly becomes a past, that which is not anymore. Time is literally a state of that which is not. Here's the kicker. Every single sensation that the human mind experiences about its universe, every sight that is seen, every touch, every sound heard, every taste and smell, as well as every thought and emotion, all occur or are constantly passing on in this flow of time. On that level, you can't stop it. Everything experienced by the human mind always is moving on, passing away, and not being present. So if you didn't identify as the pure conscious being you are, as what is and identified only on the passing level of the five senses, time, and what is not, what in the world would you be doing? What kind of a non-being, never-present self would you be? Stop a moment and let that one in. That simple switch in identification is profound. You are not the mind. Thinking and sensing are what you appear to use or do. They're not what you are as pure, conscious awareness. The would-be thinking mind always has considered what it senses and experiences in the passage of time to be reality. Now you seem to do an about-face. You don't identify with a state of sensing and thinking that always is passing and never being. You identify as pure conscious being, or what really is, the real. That which passes on the level of the sensing, thinking time mind now is seen in the correct light, as what really is not, or what is not real. Another doubting thought may come, don't tell me the things I sense aren't real or aren't being. I sense this book right now. I even sense the planet Earth right now. I see it now, and I even could reach down and touch it now. So don't tell me the book, the earth, and all those sensations aren't genuinely present. Each moment you sense something by way of a visual image, a tactile feeling, or any other sensation, those particular sensations are constantly shifting, changing, and passing on, never to return again. Each sensation is instantly replaced by another new visual or tactile sensation, and another, non-stop. Like moving frames of film in a movie projector, the specific image and sense of touch that you had of this book a few seconds ago are gone, already having been replaced by the fleeting image and touch you are experiencing at this moment in passing time, and on and on. In its essence, it all would be a state of vibration, always moving or passing on in time. All of it always is fleeting, passing away, and not being or being not. Shocking as it may sound, it would be just so much non-presence. The point is, for your entire universe, consciousness is all that truly is present. Don't read on until you settle with yourself on this. It means consciousness is the way it is, which is another way of saying reality, truth. Consciousness has to be reality, for nothing else is really being to be reality. Reality isn't a far-off state one ultimately becomes conscious of. Reality simply is what really is, which is consciousness effortlessly being right here, now. You just showed it to yourself. Meanwhile, in terms of consciousness itself, nothing changed because consciousness never fails to be what it is. It always is the real you, though it may seem a state of thinking was imagining for a while that you were something else. Based on these few paragraphs, you may not yet be willing to concede that what the mind and five senses testify to isn't really being or isn't being real. Fair enough. Know for the moment that these and similar points are discussed repeatedly, in different ways throughout these pages. By being honest with what is true of consciousness, the more it is clear how and why pure consciousness truly is all that is present. To not identify as consciousness would be to identify as a state of unconsciousness. And how intelligent is that? The beautiful truth is that there really is no choice. Consciousness is the only one being conscious, and it never fails to be itself. If this book is the first you've read on consciousness, you may be saying, "Whew, this sounds very ethereal." But the more you read, the more undeniable and real it is. If you've read books on consciousness or spirituality before, you may be saying, this sounds interesting. Reading from the viewpoint of the one self, consciousness itself, you say, this makes complete sense. It's simple. Consciousness, being, never doubts or has questions about itself. Notice how any doubts or questions seem to originate from the constantly shifting, unstable thinking of the intellect or so-called sensing mind. Now notice the certainty and power with which pure conscious awareness goes right on being, regardless of what is thought. There is nothing wrong with questioning. It is strongly encouraged, and never just accept statements because they sound authoritative, including those of this author, but to behold what these pages say, to discern the magnificence and permanence of what you are, you must make a clear distinction between pure awareness itself and the thinking you seem to be aware of. Thinking is not awareness. If you won't make this distinction and stick to it, put the book down now. Otherwise, you will be frustrated and are wasting your time. Don't fall for any superstitious nonsense that this material is too deep, just because some words are capitalized. How much heavy intellectualizing is needed before awareness is freely aware here, now? None. That's the point. If you're aware enough to simply know you are, you've got all it takes. It is sufficient for consciousness to be aware only, not intellectual. To be conscious is not otherworldly or esoteric. It's the most natural, normal thing going. Publishers like to ask who the potential audience is for a new book. Well, who is there that's not conscious? Drop all conceptual baggage. Consciousness as it now is most emphatically, is not anything metaphysical or New Age. It is not Zen or any other religion or teaching. Consciousness itself needs no teaching. It doesn't have to learn to become itself because it already is itself. Consciousness isn't Eastern, Western, or any superimposed label, but is simply what truly is. Consciousness never is what someone else is into, for it is true of you. And not after years of study, but now. Pure awareness is not a trend, not spiritually cool, not a hot money-making opportunity. Awareness doesn't see itself as being in vogue at the start of a millennium, nor think of itself as a new paradigm. It holds no preconceived notions, but simply is aware, present. So read as a clean slate of pure awareness. Read as if never aware before, but now only. Only this is what consciousness itself is. While reading, a particular point may make a strong impact. Perhaps a light will go on. Meanwhile, the next sentence beckons you to continue right on reading. Don't. Don't let the eye keep scanning down a page and assume you're getting it, while thought is back on the prior paragraph. Let any point that strikes really sink in. Ponder it quietly, in a relaxed way, with no pressure. Stay with it until you feel you have absorbed it and are ready to move on. It may help clarify subsequent points. This book is not a quick read. Remember, consciousness is. As it always is present and can't be gained in the passing of time anyway. What's the hurry? The thread that runs throughout, and the question to ask continually is, what is true of pure consciousness alone? Obviously, you are free to disagree at any time, but if you do, don't take issue with the author. You cannot be honest with your own consciousness and deny any of what is said here. This book does not tell anybody what to do. It simply states what is true of consciousness. There really can be no disagreement or resistance to this material because consciousness can't resist being conscious, and that is all these pages are concerned with. There does, however, seem to be much disagreement about reality and God, and as many interpretations as there appear to be people walking the planet. The disagreements may be minor, or they may lead to wars. Meanwhile, all will agree, I am conscious. To start here, as pure consciousness, is to be in the one right place. Notice how, regardless of one's religious beliefs, consciousness is conscious. Regardless of how much faith one has, whether a lot or none at all, consciousness is conscious. Faith can be in a God or in cold, hard scientific fact, it doesn't matter. Consciousness goes right on being, in spite of either. As said before, the beauty and power of consciousness is that it is not a matter of human faith, which is fallible and can waver or be misdirected toward evil. The ever-presence of consciousness is infallible, a changeless absolute certainty. This book is not about belief, faith, or fictitious separate personal consciousnesses, and how they must become more aware. It is about how completely, perfectly aware the one consciousness itself already is. Again, that doesn't leave you out, for that very consciousness is the only you there is. The only one being conscious, so this now can be read, is the consciousness being spoken of. It's so simple. Consciousness itself is doing it all. You no more have to become it or make it work than you are right now working at being aware. You already are.